Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, December 5th, 2025. President Donald Trump attends the 2026 World Cup draw at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. with the leaders of the co-host nations, Mexico and Canada, the three talking about what it means to co-host the world's largest sports tournament. President Trump also receives the inaugural Peace Prize from the world soccer governing body, FIFA. Trump administration releases a national security strategy that calls for a readjustment of the U.S. military presence in the Western Hemisphere to fight migration, drug trafficking, and foreign power influence in the region. We'll talk about it with Breaking Defense senior reporter Ashley Roque. Former President Joe Biden gets an award from a prominent LGBTQ plus advocacy group. A Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Vaccine Advisory Committee recommends eliminating the recommendation that all newborns receive the Hepatitis B vaccine. Indiana's House of Representatives passes a new congressional district map designed to gain Republicans 2 more U.S. House seats, part of a nationwide gerrymandering push now being done by both parties. Congresswoman Adalita Grijalva, Democrat of Arizona, says she was pushed aside and pepper sprayed when she asked for more information at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement raid. And First Lady Melania Trump reads a Christmas book to patients at National Children's Hospital in Washington, carrying on a long-standing First Lady's holiday tradition. And we start with the 2026 World Cup draw at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. President Donald Trump, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, and Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum stood in front of bowls with ping pong balls with the names of the 48 countries who have qualified for the 2026 tournament. The balls drawn out and put into 12 groups of 4 each to start the tournament. But before all that, the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, asked the leaders about what it meant to co-host this.
How big a deal is it to co-host the World Cup for Canada? Oh. Difficult question, I know, but...
It is the biggest of deals, Gianni. You know, it's the #1 sport for Canadian boys and girls. 2/3 of the country watched the last World Cup. And we are partnered with the United States and Mexico, welcoming the world. There's more than 200 nationalities in Canada, more than 200 nationalities in FIFA. The top 48 are coming to North America. It is going to be the biggest deal ever.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Presidenta Sheinbaum, la Copa Mundial de la FIFA 2026 será el evento deportivo más grande de la historia y México hará historia al convertirse en el único país en albergar 3 ediciones del torneo. ¿Qué significado tiene esto para las y los mexicanos?
Bueno, estamos orgullosas de recibir por tercera vez la Copa Mundial. México es un país extraordinario, bello, mágico, y millones visitarán nuestra nación. Además, quiero decirles que tenemos un pueblo extraordinario, trabajador y algo especial. Nosotros disfrutamos del juego de pelota desde tiempos ancestrales.
Fenomenal. Gracias. Mr. President, President Trump, next summer is historic for the United States in more than one way. What does it mean to you that the FIFA World Cup is actually taking place in the United States 250th birthday? Special.
Well, for years, Johnny, they've thought soccer or football would be so big, so fast. And I remember, I shouldn't say this because it was a long time ago, but I remember watching Pelé play on a team called the Cosmos. Pelé, who was fantastic, as you know, I assume one of the greats.
Oh, yes.
And,
Pelé. Let's applaud Pelé, please. One of the greatest.
And he scored 3 goals that day. I said, that man can play. I was pretty young at that point, and who knew this was going to happen? But when you look at what has happened to football in the United States, is, again, soccer in the United States. We seem to never call it that because we have a little bit of a conflict with another thing that's called football. But when you think about it, shouldn't it really be called? I mean, this is football. There's no question about it. We have to come up with another name for this.
Yeah.
It really doesn't make sense when you think about it. It is really football. But who would have thought it would have come to a level where you've set your all-time season ticket ratings. Nobody's ever sold as many tickets, and you're still a long way from that ball being kicked down the field. So I just want to congratulate you. What an incredible leap this has been, and congratulations to FIFA.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Big round of applause, and the best is still to come, of course.
President Donald Trump on the stage at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. with the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, and the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. The United States men's national team turned out to be in Group D, along with Paraguay, Australia, and the winner of a European playoff to be decided among Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, and Kosovo. And the first match for the U.S. team June 12th against Paraguay at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. World Cup will run from June 11th through July 19, 2026. New York Times writing about something else that happened today at the Kennedy Center. FIFA President Gianni Infantino awarded his inaugural FIFA Peace Prize to, quote, close friend Donald Trump at Friday's 2026 World Cup draw in Washington. The prize, announced by FIFA last month without prior approval from its board, the FIFA Council, was introduced, quote, to reward individuals who have taken exceptional and extraordinary actions for peace and by doing so have united people across the world, FIFA, soccer world's governing body, said in a release. The timing of the announcement, the opacity of the process and criteria, and Infantino's strong relationship with Trump led many to assume that the award was created essentially as a consolation prize for Trump after the U.S. president was passed over for the Nobel Peace Prize, the world's most prestigious award of its kind. That's the reporting from the New York Times. Here is the presentation by the FIFA president to President Trump.
Please welcome the very first winner of the FIFA Peace Prize, the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald J. Trump. Please. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is your prize. This is your Peace Prize. There is also a beautiful medal for you that you can wear everywhere you want to go.
I'm going to wear it right now.
Okay, let me hold. Fantastic. Excellent. And you will receive also, of course, a certificate which reads out, and I would read it out with your permission, what are the reasons for you receiving this FIFA Peace Prize, Football Unites the World. So the FIFA Peace Prize is presented annually on behalf of the billions of football-loving people from around the world to a distinguished individual who exemplifies an unwavering commitment to advancing peace and unity throughout the world through their notable leadership and action. And therefore, FIFA, the Fédération Internationale de Football Association, awards the 2025 FIFA Peace Prize, Football Unites the World, to Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, in recognition of his exceptional and extraordinary actions to promote peace and unity around the world. Friday, December 5th, 2025. This is the certificate. It's yours. Before giving you the floor, Mr. President, if I may say two words. Like everyone here in the room, we see images of war all over the world. And like everyone, we suffer for every child that dies. We cry with every mother that loses someone she loves. And we want to see hope. We want to see unity. We want to see a future. And I was lucky, Mr. President, to witness a few years ago, the Abraham Accord signatures. A few months ago, in Sharm el-Sheikh, the peace in the Middle East agreement regarding Gaza. I was in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur for the peace between Cambodia and Thailand. Yesterday here in Washington, the Washington Peace Agreement between Rwanda and the DRC. Well, this is what we want from a leader that cares about the people. We want to live in a safe world, in a safe environment. We want to unite. That's what we do here today. That's what we'll do at the World Cup, Mr. President. And you definitely deserve the first FIFA Peace Prize for your action, for what you have obtained in your way, but you obtained it in an incredible way. And you can always count, Mr. President, on my support, on the support of the entire football community or soccer community to help you make peace and make the world prosper all over the world. Thank you very much, Mr. President. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This is truly one of the great honors of my life. And beyond awards, Johnny and I were discussing this. We saved millions and millions of lives. The Congo, as an example, over 10 million people killed, and it was heading for another 10 million very quickly. And it just, you know, the fact that we could do that, India, Pakistan, so many different wars that we're able to end, in some cases a little bit before they started, just right before they started. It was going to be late, but we got them done, and it's such an honor to be with Johnny. I've known Johnny for so long. He's done such an incredible job, and I have to tell you, you've set new records on ticket sales, and not to bring that up because we don't want to bring a thing like that up right now, but it's an awfully nice tribute to you and to the game of football, or as we call it, soccer, but football, and that is an amazing thing. The numbers are beyond any numbers that anybody, even beyond what Johnny thought was possible.
Definitely.
I want to thank, by the way, my family, my great First Lady, Melania. You're right here, and thank you very much. And I think you're going to have an event the likes of which maybe the world has never seen. Based on the enthusiasm that I've seen, I have never seen anything like it. We've had a tremendous relationship, working relationship with Canada. We have our Prime Minister of Canada there, and we have our President of Mexico. And we've worked closely with those two countries, and the coordination and friendship and relationship has been outstanding, and I want to thank you both very much, and your countries very much. But most importantly, I just want to thank everybody. The world is a safer place now. The United States 1 year ago was not doing too well, and now I have to say we're the hottest country anywhere in the world, and we're going to keep it that way. Thank you all. Thank you. Have a great time. And Johnny, a tremendous honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you so much.
President Donald Trump at the Kennedy Center in Washington with the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, part of the elaborate ceremony for the World Cup draw, which split the 48-team field into 12 groups of 4 for the 2026 World Cup, co-hosted by the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. An article at breakingdefense.com, Trump administration unveiled a new national security strategy Thursday evening, calling for a greater emphasis in the Western Hemisphere, while also paving the way for friction points with allies and partners across the globe. Joining us now is the reporter who wrote that story, senior reporter Ashley Roque. Thanks so much for being with us. In a broad sense, what is in this national security strategy put out by the Trump administration?
Thanks for having me on. So it sort of dropped in the middle of the night last night, and everyone's sort of been expecting the national security strategy to come out, and it sort of paves the way for a national defense strategy. And at the same time, everyone was looking for sort of a pivot to the Western Hemisphere, and this just sort of provided a bit more meat on the bones, a lot of questions lingering. So what it does is it sort of says, hey, we are moving back towards the Monroe Doctrine that, sort of came out in 1823, sort of saying, hey, other countries stay out of our area, our region of the world. And it's calling for just sort of a greater work with allies and partners in the region, who those are and what that looks like, evolving by the day, by the hour, and then sort of forming new alliances. So what that actually looks like is a question mark going forward, and this document does not lay that out, of what it means, whether it's funding, exercise, military presence. It doesn't sort of provide that fidelity. So sort of the shift there. What it also does is it sort of puts up some roadblocks for working with in NATO and European allies and partners. The document calls for more diplomatic relations with Russia, but then it also sort of slights NATO and says we sort of just have to accept that NATO cannot continue to expand, and this is what it is. It also invokes a bit of fear of non-whites moving into the European countries and having a different take on what NATO means to them. The document also, it does touch on the Indo-Pacific region, which for years, the different administrations, including Trump 1, including Biden, have always been, we're pivoting to the Indo-Pacific region. This document doesn't go quite that far, but it does say allies and partners within the region, within the Indo-Pacific, sort of need to step up monetarily. But then also we still support sort of the status quo of protecting Taiwan. So that's just sort of a very top-level cover of what is in this document.
As you said in the first paragraph of your article, it paves the way for friction points with allies and partners. Have European leaders reacted to it?
So still early. Everyone's still digesting it at this point. But there has been friction points coming up repeatedly, whether it is the Ukraine peace deal, where the Trump administration sort of, slid the peace agreement, proposed peace agreement, to Ukraine without support of European partners and allies. And you could just look at that as an example, because it was going to ask those countries to actually step up security-wise. So many implications. So right before Thanksgiving, there was a gathering up in Halifax where a whole bunch of world leaders, including ministers of defense, sort of were like, hey, whoa, we need to digest this, and we actually need to say in our security. So I can expect more of that with this.
We're talking with Ashley Roque with Breaking Defense. What does national security mean to the Trump administration? It's outlined in this document. What's required to make the U.S. secure? What are the threats?
Okay, so just to pivot to the Western Hemisphere, a lot of the things that we've been seeing in the news and sort of themes over the past year. So what they outline with the pivot, countering migration, sort of halting drug trafficking, and sort of getting adversaries, whether that's, they don't really narrow it down, Russia, China, that have built up a presence within the Western Hemisphere, potentially getting them to push back out of the region a bit. So this document, again, it's very top level at this point. Analysts I've spoken to is wait, hold on. It's great to put this down on paper, but what is the actual implementation plan? And so there could be various points of implementation going forward. For example, this document, the national security strategy, should lead to a national defense strategy, which could be coming in the next days, which could actually provide more meat on the bones of what does the force presence within the Western Hemisphere look like? Are there more bases? Are there more ships? Sort of what that looks like. But then in order to have that, you have to also look at what's going to be taken, if it's actually going to be a true pivot. Will there be less forces within Europe? Are they going to follow through and potentially pull forces out of South Korea or other places in the Indo-Pacific? So again, national security strategy, big overarching ideas, but there's no meat on it yet of what actually implementation will look like.
Ashley Roque is a senior reporter with Breaking Defense. You can find her articles at breakingdefense.com and on X at AshRoque13. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You're listening to Washington Today. Former President Joe Biden was given an award today at the LGBTQ+ Victory Institute's 41st International LGBTQ plus leaders conference in Washington, D.C. The Advocate writing about this: for Biden, who left office in January, the award marks a capstone in what LGBTQ plus advocates widely view as the most inclusive administration in U.S. history, one that appointed a record number of LGBTQ plus officials, reinstated and expanded federal protections, restored transgender military service, and elevated barrier-breaking queer and trans leaders such as the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg and Admiral Rachel Levine. The moment arrives as LGBTQ plus people, particularly trans Americans, under the second administration of President Donald Trump, face accelerating political aggression, misinformation campaigns, and state-sanctioned erasure. That was from the article at The Advocate. Here's former President Joe Biden at today's conference.
Next week marks 3 years. 3 years since many of us stood on a crisp day in the South Lawn of the White House, where I signed the Respect for Marriage Act. Folks, as the ceremony came to an end, the sun began to set. Rainbow lights lit up the portico of the White House. You know, the moment had an air of celebration, but also, quite frankly, for me and many of you, I expect, an air of relief. Relief. Finally, through the hard work, faith, counsel, sheer grit of folks like you in this room and so many who came before you, the momentous battle was finally won. Finally. And look, today, though, we know there's much more work to do. And the challenges ahead can feel daunting, particularly in the face of everything we're seeing coming out of this reactionary White House. You know, we're all here today for the same reason. Same reason. It's all because we believe in the power of our democracy to pull the nation together. You know, our worst moments, actually, we're the only country in the world that's gone through every crisis and come out stronger than we went into the crisis. Every time. America's the only country. Also, is founded on an idea. We're unique, not a joke. It's not just, America. It's true. We're the only country founded on idea. Every other country in the world is founded on geographic boundaries, religion, ethnicity. But we're an idea. A strong idea. It's stronger and more powerful than any dictator or any army. And that in America, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal. All deserve to be treated with dignity and throughout their lives. And all of us, each and every one of us, deserves that. That's how I was raised. That's how many of you were raised, I guess, too. We've never lived up to that idea, though, but we've never walked away from it. We've never walked away from it either. And so you've heard me say before that when I was growing up, whenever something bad happened, I used to be a stutterer and people made a lot of fun of you, a lot of other things. My dad would look at me and say, Joey, just get up. Get up, Joey. Get up. Well, folks, that's my message to all of us today. To all who love our country. To all of us who are dismayed by the present state of the Union. This is no time to give up. It's time to get up. Get up and fight back. Get up. Continue to fight. And what's the fight all about? It's not high praise. It's about protecting the Constitution.
Former President Joe Biden today at the LGBTQ plus Victory Institute's 41st International Leaders Conference in Washington, D.C. Stat News writes a panel that advises on U.S. vaccine policy voted on Friday to recommend a delay in when most babies begin to be vaccinated against hepatitis B, overturning a 30-year-old policy that has contributed to a massive decline in cases of the virus. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices voted 8-3 to recommend the change, following more than a day of contentious discussion. The new recommendation is that parents should discuss with their doctors whether to give the hepatitis B vaccine at birth birth or at all, and that those who choose to do so should wait to begin the vaccine series until their baby is at least 2 months old. That was from the Stat News article. Here is some of the debate before the vote. Retsev Levy, MIT professor of operations management and a member of the advisory committee, supported the change.
At the high level, I believe that this policy, this new proposed change, is rejecting the existing policy that relies on the principle that everybody should be receiving the same care when it comes to vaccination, and that based on really a sense of fear that everybody is in the same level of risk, a sense of we need to treat or use babies and children as safety net, and that essentially vaccines are risk-free. And I think that the alternative policy is saying something very different, very different. And it starts by saying that if you are a baby born to a mom that was tested positive to hepatitis B, you absolutely are recommended to take this vaccine because it's a very effective vaccine that will protect against very serious outcomes of a very serious disease. And the same holds if you belong to another high-risk population. We have an effective intervention and against a very serious illness. However, if you're a baby that was born to a mother that was tested negative to Hep B, you need to realize as a parent that your risk of infection throughout your early stage of life and probably throughout most of your childhood is extremely low. To the extent that it's even hard to quantify how low it is. It's probably 1 in several millions. And that means that as a parent, we encourage you, in consultation with your physician, to think very carefully, do you want to expose your child, your baby, to an intervention that could have some potential harms when the risk is so low?
Retsev Levy is an MIT professor of operations management and a member of the advisory committee on immunization practices at today's meeting. Dr. Jason Goldman, a liaison to the committee from the American College of Physicians, participated remotely and opposed the changes.
Dr. Goldman, please share your 2-minute summary of your point of view, if you don't mind.
Thank you. First, I agree with you on the principles of scientific inquiry and rigor that you opened the meeting with. I would just like to see this committee actually use it in practice. In addition, I would ask that the members of this committee listen to the liaisons and not use it as their personal time to eat into hours to pontificate. In addition, your concern of COVID mandates, if they're there, why are we trying to change the Hep B schedule when your concerns are over COVID mandates? Where is a universal recommendation considered a mandate as opposed to a simple recommendation? If your problem is with informed consent, why are we trying to change the recommendations that are not supported by evidence? Where is the detailed drill down of which stakeholders want changed? Is it a majority of the country, or is it just a small segment who oppose the birth dose on ideology and not on science? Where is your cost analysis of serology testing, and have you considered the difficulty of implementation by having to bring children back for blood draws, adding another layer of burden to this healthcare system? Why are you comparing it to countries with universal health care, which we do not have? What do you do with those patients who do not have insurance and cannot have access to care to get that testing? Where is your data on the serology for one dose giving lifelong protection? And in deference to statements made, we do not make recommendations by asking our friends if they know who has been infected, but rather, what does the evidence and data show? School mandates do not have any relevance to a birth dose vaccine that we are discussing today. This vote is an unnecessary solution looking to find a problem to solve. It will not fix your concerns of informed consent, but only endanger children and increase risk of death for millions. Your role is population health, not the individual. We are looking at what are the population risks and how do we make those recommendations. As a physician with over 25 years of direct patient care experience and representing 160,000 internal medicine specialists throughout the world, the largest single specialty organization in the world, I urge this committee to do the right thing, do no harm, and reject all of these votes.
Dr. Jason Goldman, liaison from the American College of Physicians to the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices. practices at today's meeting before the committee voted 8-3 to recommend lifting the recommendation that's been in place for 30 years that all newborn babies receive a vaccine for hepatitis B. The change will still need to be endorsed by the acting director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Jim O'Neill, or by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. before it becomes part of the CDC vaccination schedule. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, chair of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, writing today on X, as a liver doctor who has treated patients with hepatitis B for decades, this change to the vaccine schedule is a mistake. The hepatitis B vaccine is safe and effective. The birth dose is a recommendation, not a mandate. Before the birth dose was recommended, 20,000 newborns a year were infected with hepatitis B. Now it's fewer than 20. Ending the recommendation for newborns makes it more likely the number of cases will begin to increase again. This makes America sicker. Acting CDC Director O'Neill should not sign these new recommendations and instead retain the current evidence-based approach. That post from Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, also a doctor. Washington Today continues in a moment.
Democracy. It isn't just an idea. It's a process shaped by leaders elected to the highest offices and entrusted to a select few with guarding its basic principles. It's where debates unfold, decisions are made, and the nation's course is charted. Democracy in real time. This is your government at work. This is C-SPAN, giving you your democracy unfiltered.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. From the Indianapolis Star, the Indiana House of Representatives passed the mid-decade redistricting bill, bringing the state one step closer to eliminating its 2 Democratic seats and helping the GOP keep control of Congress. A dozen Republicans broke with their ranks to join the Democrats in voting against the measure. Democrats and even some Republicans have lambasted the bill's proposed congressional map for the way it carves Indianapolis into 4 sprawling districts, which some fear will dilute the power of black voters and harm the city economically. Democrats have also suggested the map could constitute racial gerrymandering, an accusation the bill author, Ben Smaltz, Republican from Auburn, has fiercely denied. That was from the Indianapolis Star. Here is State Representative Smaltz speaking on the House floor in Indianapolis before the vote.
Despite hearing the contrary over and over, House Bill 1032 follows our rules, our laws, the intent of the framers of the Constitution, and the precedent set by the Supreme Court of the United States, including last night's decision allowing the new maps in Texas. Redistricting is not merely a procedural exercise every 10 years. It's an ongoing constitutional responsibility. While the census anchors the process, nothing in the law prevents a legislature from revisiting maps when circumstances demand it. The Supreme Court could not be clearer. States may redraw districts whenever they deem appropriate, provided constitutional and statutory requirements are met. Some have contended the process is political, but representation itself is inherently political. The framers placed this duty on state legislatures, fully aware that it involves debate, judgment, and disagreement. Our task is not to strip politics from a political process. It is to carry out that process lawfully, transparently, and responsibly. This process has been open. Draft maps have been publicly released. Feedback has been and continues to be received and considered. No redistricting process is going to satisfy everybody, but transparency strengthens legitimacy and trust. Leadership requires addressing challenges when they arise, not when the calendar makes it comfortable. We do not choose the timing. The circumstances choose it for us. Responsible leadership requires action. And for these reasons, I respectfully ask you to support House Bill 1032.
Indiana State Representative Ben Schmaltz, a Republican sponsor of the congressional redistricting bill that puts in place new district lines that Republicans hope will flip 2 Democratic seats, the only 2 Democratic U.S. House seats in the state, out of the 9-member congressional delegation to Republican. He referred to a Supreme Court ruling, CNN writing, the Supreme Court on Thursday allowed Texas to use a congressional map that will boost President Donald Trump's effort to keep Republicans in control of Congress, blocking a lower court decision that found the new boundaries were likely unconstitutional because they were drawn based on race. Again, that was from CNN. More debate from the Indiana House today before the vote. Earl Harris is a Democrat. He spoke against the bill.
You know, we've heard the author say this is all about political advantage, political advantage. We keep hearing that. This is just political advantage. That's a good way to phrase something that's not 100% accurate. We know what this will do to black and brown communities. We know what this will do to disenfranchise and dilute the minority vote. So let's just be real and get it out there. Let's be real about some other things. We also hear people whom say we should do this is because Indiana is a red state, so it deserves a 9-0 makeup of the Congress. That is not accurate. The president only received 58% of the vote, not 85. The governor only received 54% of the vote. That does not scream red. Why are we trying to disenfranchise 40% of the state? Our job is to take care of the state. And for some reason, some people here and people who are not here in another part of the country feel like 40% does not matter. We keep hearing, well, gerrymandering happens all over the place. This isn't just, Indiana. People do that. This is beyond gerrymandering. This is mid-decade redistricting. That's beyond what gerrymandering is. And you're correct. Does gerrymandering happen in other states? It does. And I said this in the committee, and I'm going to repeat it. All of us, when we were a child, heard the whole thing of, well, if your friends jumped off the bridge, are you going to jump off the bridge? So we should not be following up and looking at using an excuse and saying, well, others do this, so we should do this.
Indiana State Representative Earl Harris, a Democrat, during the House floor debate in Indianapolis. Before the vote today to pass this Republican-leaning new congressional district map, the vote was 57-41. The bill now goes to the Indiana Senate. Governor Mike Braun, Republican of Indiana, spoke to the Star City News on Tuesday in support of this effort.
How do you feel the President Trump's actions with the local redistricting efforts kind of have helped the efforts or hurt the efforts?
Well, I think if you look at every other state that's been asked to help level the playing field, and I use this simple example, you look at the 6 bluest states, they're in New England, probably have 3 times as many electoral votes as the 6 reddest states that would be out in the West with maybe 1 or 2 congressional districts. They've been gerrymandered for decades. And if you look at even how we count who's eligible to vote, that disproportionately benefits places like California, Illinois, New York. So this is to level the playing field, and Indiana's been the only place that's drug its feet, mostly through the state Senate. Of course, I think now they're getting enough conservatives and Republicans starting to weigh in to where they decided to come back in and discuss it publicly on December 8th. And the House started on Monday, and they've already got a product out there that's going through committee. So I think there are going to be maps to look at, but the underlying fairness of it is that we've been outmaneuvered by the other side of the aisle, and they've used gerrymandering across the country to where they can't do it anymore. And most of the loud outcry is from them. And we are the exception, mostly due to our state Senate, in that we haven't moved more quickly. I think we're finally getting there.
Governor Mike Braun, Republican from Indiana, interviewed by a reporter from Star City News on Tuesday. And today, the Indiana House passed a redistricting bill favoring the Republicans, sending it to the state Senate. This is Washington today. WMUR in New Hampshire writes, the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday announced it has agreed to take up the constitutionality of President Donald Trump's order on birthright citizenship. The The case under review came from New Hampshire. Birthright citizenship is the first Trump immigration-related policy to reach the court for a final ruling. The president signed the birthright citizenship order on his first day in office. The order sought to limit citizenship to only children born to parents who are citizens themselves or legal permanent residents. Every lower court that has looked at the issue has concluded that Trump's order violates or likely violates the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. That was from WMUR. Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, a Democrat from Arizona, writing today on X, ICE just conducted a raid by Taco Hero in Tucson, a small mom-and-pop restaurant that has served our community for years. When I presented myself as a member of Congress asking for more information, I was pushed aside and pepper sprayed. The Congresswoman included this video.
Hi, it's Adelita Grijalva. We just came up on a community that was protecting their people. We had, I would say, maybe 40 ICE agents, most of them masked, in several vehicles that the community had stopped right here, right in the middle of the street, because they were afraid that they were taking people without due process, without any kind of notice. And so I was here. This is like the restaurant I come to literally once a week, and was sprayed in the face by a very aggressive agent, pushed around by others when I literally was not being aggressive. I was asking for clarification, which is my right as a member of Congress. So once introduced myself, once I did, I assumed that it would be a little calmer, but there was literally only one person that was trying to speak to me in any kind of civil tone, and everyone else was being rude and disrespectful. And I just can only imagine, if they're going to treat me like that, how they're treating everybody else. So we saw it. We saw people directly sprayed, members of our press, everybody that was with me, my staff member, myself, 2 staff members we have like remnants of whatever they sprayed on us. Excuse me, it's bothering me. And I think that this is one of the problems, the biggest problem that we have in this community, is that we have Trump that has no regard for any due process, the rule of law, the Constitution. They're literally disappearing people from the streets. They arrested 2 people. We have no idea where they're going. And I want to thank Tucson Police Department for coming and taking care of the space, making sure that everyone was safe once ICE left. And you can see that traffic is back to normal because of them. And so they were not the aggressors here. They arrived on the scene after ICE was already here and after there was a block in the street. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. I want to protect the people in this community, and that's why I showed up. I think it's important for me to have eyes on what's happening here and not just have it be, stories through other people. So I'll keep you posted if I hear anything else.
A video from Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, Democrat of Arizona, in Tucson. The White House border czar Tom Homan spoke about immigration policy Thursday at the University of Texas, El Paso, part of a Turning Point USA college tour. Tom Homan took questions from the audience, and some challenged the administration's approach.
Being the country league is just not okay. I mean, if that's the message we send, sir, and I think you're never going to fix the problem.
No, and I think a lot of the fear on my side of things is the fear of, to put it in a headline, is the villainization of poor Hispanic people. I think that there's a lot of ground to cover between, and it's not like the mutual excuse. Anyway, my question. I just want to. My question is.
I appreciate it.
Just as a first step, is there anything that you can say to me right now that can ensure me that your administration or ICE or anybody is doing things to lower the number, let's say, of collateral arrests?
No. Well, the reason I say it, let me tell you this. I say no the way, sir. I say no the way it says right now. You know how we can get less collateral arrests? Let me in the jail. If the sanctuary cities will let us in the jail, more officers in the jail means less people on the street. Less people on the street means less collateral. So let me have the criminal alien and safety and security of the jail where it's safer for the alien, it's safer for the officer, and certainly safer for the community. So fight to end sanctuary cities and you see those collaterals decrease because we are prioritizing public safety threats. But I'll say it again. If you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. But I appreciate the question. Thank you for coming up. I know you took some heat, but thank you.
Border Czar Tom Homan at a Turning Point USA event at the University of Texas at El Paso, UTEP, on Thursday. USA Today writes, after a record-setting volume of job cuts in October, employers in November posted fewer layoffs, but reductions were 24% higher than a year ago and the highest since the COVID-19 pandemic. Another sign of a volatile job market buffeted with economic challenges from slowing demand to tariff uncertainties. That was from USA Today. The article cites a report from consulting firm Challenger, Gray & Christmas. There was no November jobs report today from the Labor Department. That's been delayed until after next week's Federal Reserve meeting to consider interest rates. Kevin Hassett, chair of the White House National Economic Council, was on CNBC today talking about the state of the economy and the future of interest rates.
The data are missing a little bit, right? Because of the government shutdown, we went a couple of months without the kind of data that policymakers in the White House and policymakers at the Fed want to see to make sure that they've got a real strong handle on what's going on. We've seen some anecdotal reports, like through the ADP releases, that the job market might be weakening. At the same time, industrial production's at an all-time high. We've got GDP growth in the 4s for the last 2 quarters. And so, our expectation is that the government shutdown had a bigger negative effect on the economy than we expected, but we're going to have a bigger rebound in the first quarter. Against that backdrop, it's a good time for the Fed to cautiously reduce rates again, and that's what I expect that they're going to do.
Kevin Hassett, chair of the White House National Economic Council, interviewed on CNBC. Another CNBC article, a key inflation measure was lower than expected in September, the Commerce Department said Friday, in a report delayed by the government shutdown that gives a further green light for the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Wall Street today, the Dow up 104, NASDAQ up 72, S&P up 13. CNN writing that Netflix has triumphed in the bidding war for Warner Brothers and HBO, announcing a deal that could combine 2 of the 3 biggest streamers with one of the largest traditional movie and television studios. But first, it will be subjected to intense regulatory review in the U.S. and other countries. Netflix announced the blockbuster deal with Warner Brothers Discovery on Friday morning. It has agreed to buy the legendary TV and movie studio and assets like the HBO Max streaming service for $72 billion plus debt. From NPR, the European Union has announced a fine of $140 million against Elon Musk's X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, for several failures to comply with rules governing large digital platforms. And from Spectrum News, tiny vehicles popular in Japan could be made in the United States. President Donald Trump announced Friday. Trump first suggested the idea of domestically manufacturing so-called key cars on Wednesday when he announced a rollback of U.S. fuel efficiency standards. He wrote on Truth Social, without offering specifics, "I have just approved tiny cars to be built in America. Manufacturers have long wanted to do this, just like they are so successfully built in other countries." That was from Spectrum News. The Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was interviewed on CNBC Thursday about this.
The president says, I saw these microcars over in Asia. Why don't we have these here? We can't build them here in the U.S. I think we're not going to get into the technical parts of this, but there are reasons why we don't see those vehicles here in the U.S. Will you change the rules so that microcars can be built and they can be driven on highways? Right now they're restricted by speed limits and safety features. Will you change that?
He called me after the meeting actually and said, let's change the rules. And so I worked with NHTSA. We're in the process, clearing the deck. So listen, if there's a market for those vehicles, I want to give our manufacturers the opportunity to build those cars. And so we are at NHTSA going to clear the deck, clear the rules, and let them build those small cars. And again, are they going to work on the freeways? Probably not. But again, vehicles that work in cities, and if that's where you drive, it could be a great solution for you. And by the way, much more affordable than other options that are on the market today.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy on CNBC on Thursday. President Trump announcing today on Truth Social, "I have just approved tiny cars to be built in America." He also wrote they can be propelled by gasoline, electric, or hybrid. These cars of the very near future are inexpensive, safe, fuel efficient, and quite simply amazing. And more from the Spectrum News article, Americans have not shown a strong interest in small cars. As has been the case for several years, the best-selling vehicles in the United States so far this year through October 2025 are full-size pickup trucks and SUVs. At National Children's Hospital in Washington, D.C., AP writes that Melania Trump on Friday visited the Children's Hospital and wished the patients strength and lots of toys from Santa Claus as she continued a decades-old tradition for First Ladies. 2 patients, an 11-year-old boy and 5-year-old girl, escorted her into the festively decorated atrium at Children's National Hospital, the nation's capital. Melania Trump sat in a big red chair in front of a tall Christmas tree and read How Does Santa Go Down the Chimney by Mac Barnett for about 24 child patients and others in the audience. That was from AP. Here's the final minute of that reading.
Santa goes up the chimney the same way he comes down, and I have no idea how Santa does that. But I'm so glad he can. Thank you. I'm sure Santa will visit all of you this Christmas and bring you a lot of toys. So I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I wish you a lot of strength and love. My husband, President, is sending love and best wishes as well. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
First Lady Melania Trump at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. More from the Associated Press articles. She brought gifts for the patients, including tree ornaments stamped with Be Best, the name of her child well-being initiative. And the hospital visit continues a holiday tradition started by Bess Truman, who was First Lady from 1945 to 53. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. Before we go, remember a new episode of C-SPAN Ceasefire airs tonight, Friday, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. Host Dasha Burns will have on 2 members of Congress, Ro Khanna, Democrat of California, and Don Bacon, Republican of Nebraska, for a bipartisan discussion on the top issues facing the country, including U.S.-Venezuela, tensions, and health care. Watch C-SPAN's Ceasefire or listen here on C-SPAN Radio tonight, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night and weekend.